Welcome to another Azure Centric Podcast on our Azure Weekly Update show. I'm Marcos Nogueira. I'm your host, and with me I have my good friend Andrew Lowes. How are you, Andrew?
I'm amazing today. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So another week. So we are on episode, I think, 28, if I'm not mistaken,
I
which
think
is a
so.
very good mark.
Yeah, we've made
And
it halfway over the 1 year mark, so
yeah.
it's all downhill from here. So it's good.
Exactly. But let's start. Thank you. To thank in this case you that you are listening, and thank you that you are seeing this as well, because it's always my humble moment when Monday morning arrives, and we are starting to get all of that love from you guys, especially from you that you are listening. If you are new at this channel, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to just um, make sure that you are getting all the updates for the podcast. And I hope that you enjoy it. If you are one of our existing um, listeners and viewers, we want to thank you again, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was actually looking at last week's video earlier today, and I was really surprised how many views we keep getting. All the different people watching the videos and leaving feedback and comments. And uh, as you know, I kind of run by the very simple motto that if we give a little bit of ourselves and we share a little bit of
Yes.
ourselves, if we can help just one person when we do that each week, then it's time well spent and effort that is really having a positive outcome, right? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
yeah, so it's amazing to me. But that aside, so this week we had to, as it were, like trim the fat a little bit, right? So there was a lot of Azure news this week,
It
and
was.
yeah, and it was almost before we kind of went through our process and we cut the articles that are outside of our area that we don't include. There
Yes.
was a lot of Azure SQL stuff.
Yes.
So a lot of
Mainly
my
Azure SQL, I have to say. Not as so more like database kind of announcements, because it was not
yeah,
only SQL, it was MySQL,
yeah,
Postgres, and
yeah,
that
there was
is
a
not,
lot of MySQL stuff in there
yeah,
too. Yeah,
and those were not our area, right? And the idea again of this podcast and of this show is to bring the news of Azure, but on a perspective from the field, from two IT architects in this case, that they work always with Azure, and bring what is that going to change our lives, right? And change the life of
absolutely.
our customers. And that is I think is the essence, is the core of this show, is doing that. That's why the reason that it's not because we don't like database or something like that. It's because we don't have the deep knowledge to say that is that a good update or not. All the updates are updates, but we take with a grain of salt what we won't talk about it. And when we talk about it here, it's because it will influence directly our life, and this is what we want to pass on as a message, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a bit of an IaaS and PaaS focus,
Yes.
and we do exclude certain things. Some IoT is out and some database is out.
Yeah.
There's always
Yeah.
crossover. But, anyways, that said, so this week we do have kind of a dual theme again,
Yes.
right? So we have a whole lot of site recovery
Yeah.
announcements.
Yes. And we have some related to monitoring, in this case, Upper Insights as well. So
Exactly.
stay tuned. Let's roll out the introduction video, and we'll come back in a few moments. So welcome back. Let's dive into the first one. So the first one is the new Azure VMs for general purpose and memory intensive workloads is now in public preview. So again, once more, Azure with all of the issues that we are seeing in the world regarding supply chain, especially for PCs, computers, and all of those components, they are increasing their uh, performance in this case and new VMs. So what we're talking about here is the generation 5 of the DV, DSV, DDV, DDSV, EV, and EDV. All
Spot on.
we're starting good. I think this is going to be an amazing
twisters right out of the gate. This is going to be a good week. I like it.
Exactly. So all the all the series 5, all of this series. Oh my god, I don't know what I have to say. I don't know what they are doing, but the guy must be very humorous when he start to create all of these family names. But
Well,
yes.
I think they didn't intend for us to rhyme them off in a row. It's kind of like a Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, right? So
wow.
that's right. That's
Wow,
right.
I should have a button of clapping over here on my stream deck to just do that. Okay.
Oh my gosh. So, but yeah. So, first article, folks, we're already off the rails. That's a good start. Not a bad thing. I'd like to point out there's sunshine in the background behind me again.
Yes.
So it's not our fault. Can't hold us responsible for these things. We're solar powered. What can we say?
Exactly.
But in all seriousness, though, this is a really big update, right? So in these series, you can now scale for workloads up to 96 virtual CPUs.
Mm-hmm.
And if my eyes are still working properly for me here without my glasses on, 2,400 gigs of RAM.
No,
Is that right?
SSD.
SSD storage. See?
SSD.
Interesting.
The
what's
machines.
what's the RAM on these ones?
The RAMs, it's 672 gigs of RAM.
Ah, yep. Okay, there it is. You're right on. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, nothing to sneeze at either, right? So exactly. 2,400 gigs, though, that's the large local SSD storage, right?
Yes, it is. It is that. It is that. So, and yeah, so it's good because now we're starting to see and basically these new machines, what they have is based on the 3rd generation of the Intel Xeon Platinum, the 8370. See the Ice Lake, the with architecture of Ice Lake, that goes from all cores goes up to 3.5 gigahertz with the Intel Turbo Boost technology of 2.0 as well. So
every time I hear turbo with a processor, I'm thinking 66 megahertz.
Yes, and the hyper-threading one. Remember right? those ones that you had on the tower? You had the button say turbo. Button. Oh yeah. My God, yes. Down to the memory lane. Oh, yes.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's I think that is a good deviation. If you guys are on that type, leave us a comment or leave us a thumbs up or something like that to see how many of you have exactly the same, not age, because we have 2 different ages, right? We have the body age and the mental age.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the experience. That's age that we will talk about. We don't care about your age.
I actually have a bit of an ask for our listeners and viewers. So on Azure Centric on YouTube, I would love to see a couple of people's favorite photos of their old turbo buttons that they had on their towers.
Yeah.
Just a random ask out of nowhere.
Exactly. if they still have it, right? Because right
Yeah,
now
if you
that's
still have it, yeah, you
yeah,
may have to take a picture of your actual physical photograph with your cell phone if you have a non-digital photo, because
yeah,
digital photography was not quite popular at that time, not for consumers at least.
absolutely. Yeah, but all of this is available. So usually the DS, the D series, right? And all
Mm.
of these new ones, the DSV, the DV, the DDSV, or the DDS, they are basically general purpose. So it's not like they built for example, for running those massive workloads. They will have new computes, new ways to do it, but you have a lot of RAM. The E as well, it's more like the a little bit above the D
Yeah.
series, but it's still a good series with that you can have with exactly the same way.
Yeah, they're general purpose servers, like
Yes,
for kind of vertical apps or something like that that you may run in your organization, or other workloads that you just need to process an in-house application, for example.
absolutely, absolutely. Moving to the next one. This is an audible mention that we want to talk about it. I incurring to this a lot of times is the general availability for Azure Hybrid Benefits for Linux with reserved instance and VMSS support. So
Yep.
this means that as the same way that, for example, you have machines, Windows machines that you can bring your own license, right? Now you can do that with your Linux distribution. In this
Hmm.
case, it's more towards to the Red Hat and SUSE that allows for them to bring their pre-existing Red Hat, in this case, enterprise license and the SUSE enterprise license into the cloud. So makes them uh, way more, in this case, use of those licenses they already paid, right?
Hmm.
They don't need, in this case, to pay the full machine like you have on Windows. They are a little bit cheaper, and you can still use, and that's I think is a good part of it. You can still use the machines from the Azure Marketplace, not the machines,
Absolutely. What
the
the
images
images, yeah,
of the
and
Azure
then you use
Marketplace.
the bring your own licensing model
Yeah.
with them. Yeah. So there's two things that really stand out for me in this update. The first one is that it's fully compatible with Azure Arc. That's a big deal. I've been doing a lot of work in AVS, the Azure VMware solution, and Azure Arc is only in preview, so we can't roll it out to production environment, right? So Azure Arc allows for a lot of integration like VM tagging, things like that, that may not be necessarily natively available with the IaaS or PaaS offering that you're utilizing. But Azure Arc allows you to kind of overlay that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very useful for especially large enterprise,
Mm-hmm.
really helpful. The other thing is co-located technical support.
Ah, you
This
stole
is
my
a
thunder.
huge, huge thing. So, as I said, I'm going to pick on AVS all week long this week. So, I've been doing a lot of work inside AVS, and Microsoft and VMware do a really good job of integrating the support. So, you have one spot, one ticket, you're using Microsoft Azure VMware solution. So, you create your ticket with Microsoft, and it kind of flows down, and if it needs to escalate to somebody else, then they do that. Microsoft handles that with you,
Yes.
right? It's a partnership. And that's what they're talking about here. So for you create your Azure technical support ticket, your SR, your service request. Then you also get upstream support inherited with your licenses that you bring from Red Hat and SUSE. And one ticket resolution is a big deal because if that service request number, the ticket number changes throughout the support process, it can be really, really tough for your frontline technical support help
Yes.
desk folks to keep everything updated in one spot so that you, the backend admin, are actually getting all of the updates you need on that ticket.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it is a big deal, right?
It is. It is. It is a big deal. I have
And I'm
another
sorry to
one that
steal your
that that
favorite.
I want to add to this. that it was impactful for me in this case. A few projects that I had, that is the part of the be able to build, in this case, the clusters on either Red Hat and SUSE, and then was a particular happening, for example, on SAP project, that we had to switch from SUSE and Linux because of the cost of having running those machines that we were migrating from, in this case, or the application from on premise to the cloud, or even building, in this case, a brand new one. That right now, because of this, you can have the Azure Shared Disk that will replace, exactly, not replace, it will act like the global file system that you have inside of the Red Hat and the SUSE, that allows you to build way easier and way cheaper your clusters regarding Red Hat and SUSE, right? And that is huge because now this is GA. So now this is available for you to use in production on the full blown. And usually we don't use clusters on the on the test environments, or only for testing, right, purpose. But this is really important in this case, in my opinion, why this is an important update for the Red Hat, or in this case for the Linux community, right?
It is, and I just want to kind of add to that supplemental is that same point is also very critical for good governance, because then that shared,
Yeah,
like the Azure shared disk, the global file system, is tagged and associated with that app.
yeah,
And that means that there's a way to allocate those resources, those costs,
yes,
and build back to that application, or at least know
yeah,
who is costing what.
yes,
And when we
absolutely.
use things like Azure Files or Azure Net Files, things like that, it can be really tough,
It can.
because then you have to get into some weird solutioning to be able to allocate costs and things using tags for directories within the file system, and it gets really messy. So this
Absolutely.
is a really cool
It
solution,
is.
by the way.
And there is another one that I almost forgot because I had two. I had three. One, you stole my thunder regarding the support, but I
I'm
had
sorry.
these other discs. And the other one that is really important as well is now all the updates comes from Microsoft maintaining those updates regarding the Red Hat and SUSE, and you can use that part with the automatic image maintenance. So meaning that every time that, like you have on Microsoft side as well on Windows, that every time they release patches, they kind of release different versions. You have at least three versions. You have the most updated one, then you have like the second patch. I think you have 3 months of difference of the image, and I think they will do that as well for you in regards of compatibility. You don't have always the last one. You can always revert to something that, and that is maintained by Microsoft, which is really good in this case for these updates, right?
Yeah, it's amazing, yeah, because then you can use it in your test environment. You just spin up your cluster,
Yes.
test the update,
And
it works
sometimes,
great.
because Linux is the way that works, the blocks that you put on top of it, right, they are not fully compatible, for example, with the version that with the latest version. You need to go one or two versions back to do just do that implementation, right?
See,
And
and
that's
that's
the
really
reason.
fascinating, because I actually had a conversation this past week with a client about that. And it's difficult, right? So we have to stay up to date to keep our security teams happy and stay well patched and protected in our environments. But at the same time, vendors, like third party vendors other than Microsoft, seem to lag behind in their patching. So we end up with this compatibility kind of competition, right? So we have to patch the OS, but the vendor says, no, we're N minus two for patching all the time, N minus two. So there can be a lot of delicate balance in that world of software
Oh,
patching and
absolutely.
OS patching. I'm going to say I'm happy right now not to be dealing with that a whole lot on a day-to-day basis.
I don't. I just have Azure Automation to do that for me, and
Exactly,
and
right?
Man, it's
Yeah,
like those days that I got it. I just received an email, say everything is patched. Say, oh, awesome, thank you.
so much PowerShell time working on patching
Oh, before
things.
yes, before
Oh
yes.
my gosh. I mean, it was fun and it was cool,
Yeah,
but
I
at the
remember,
same
for
time.
example, and this is a very good friend of mine, Dave Kaula, that is also an Azure MVP right now, but he used to be a Hyper-V MVP like me. That he developed this massively and really good script, PowerShell script that was for patching Hyper-V clusters, that you are patching one, and you are basically grabbing all the patch from WSUS, for example, and
Mhm.
it was being applied to that node. It was first draining the nodes and all of that, and it reminds me the way that now uh, uh, Azure Patch is doing, or Azure Patch, no, the patch management,
Mhm.
update management is doing, because it's applying one and going to the next one and applying. It's exactly the same logical that he applied, but he had to create manually, and
Yes.
he had to run this manually. So the ultimate part that was missing is the part of automation. So I even remember using his good script to work, in this case, with orchestrator, the system center orchestrator, to patch
Hmm.
the Hyper-Vs, for example. That was my automation at that time, to run that, because the script inside have the entire logic, and it was massive. It was really good, I have to say. So kudos for Dave Kaula, to do that, because he was getting there with all of that patching. But yeah, yeah, absolutely. Moving to the next one, we already deviate from this already. Public preview on stateful and 1 minute frequency log alerts in Azure Monitor. Right? So
Absolutely.
log alerts right now, it's doing, this is in preview, I have to say.
Hmm.
It's getting our stateful log alert. So what does this mean? Means that with this feature enabled, you will can fire automatically log alerts, okay, and resolve once the condition you have it's no longer met. So this is really cool, because on Azure Monitor we used to have that, but not with log search, in this case log alerts. It
That's
was
right.
with monitoring. It was with, I'm failing the name, it was with monitor state, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes. Yeah. And stateful is really cool.
Is,
And if you're into monitoring, stateful is kind of, I think, let's use the saying, the bee's knees, right? Because it means we don't have to go in and acknowledge the alert. It self corrects
yes,
when the state corrects.
exactly. And this the difference that we are talking about regarding the monitoring one is, we have monitoring of the VMs, right?
Hmm.
So outside of the VMs, that is responsible for, that is Azure that is doing it, and then it reports back to Azure Monitor, and then we can have way quicker than this one. It's a little bit different. What we're talking about is, we have the agent of Azure Monitor inside the VM. We are looking for the logs, okay? So the event needs to happen inside of the VM, and then sends to Azure Monitor. It was always a delay regarding this. So now in preview, we can have this to lower as 1 minute frequency.
Yes.
Usually it was like between, if I'm not mistaken, 5 to 15 minutes, right?
It was. It was kind of a random thing,
Yes.
and you could use some PowerShell to alter your settings. But out of the box, it was between 5 to 15 minutes, kind of randomized,
Yes.
which meant that if, let's say, you have a halted query that's blocked up your queue in SQL, now you might be 15 minutes until you know
Yeah.
that that has happened. And certainly, in a busy environment, you'll have users phoning within 2 or 3 minutes usually when that happens.
Exactly.
But now it's down to 1 minute, which means now you can trigger the automation and all of the things we love about Azure
Yeah.
Monitor, right? So you find out that something has happened. The monitoring system sends that, the logging system rather, sends that alert to Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor can now, for example, purge the queue and clear that error.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only that, it's like usually when I talk with monitoring with my customers or with the customers, I always try to make them aware of the dynamic alerts. So means that the alert will happen in a period of time. So for example, if that alert happens 3 times in a period of 5 or 15 minutes, that could have something, because usually if you're doing these type of alerts and you have a spike, right, and it basically, that's the part that I like about these log alerts to auto resolve, is you have a
Mhm.
spike, so it goes out of the what is your baseline, right, and then if it comes down it will auto resolve. And now with dynamic you can say, okay, I want to quantify that space, that interval that I'm talking about, to not getting alert, because that means that probably my application, yeah, the spike, but is well configured, because you could resolve the spike in a time fashioning way. Okay, but if that happens too many times, let's say if that happens on a period of 5 minutes or 50 minutes, happens like 4 or 5 times, that might indicate that I might have a problem in the future, and now I need to look at it, or at least to look at those kind of things. So that's why I like this part very much. This update and becomes available on GA, so we can implement that associated with dynamic alerts. So now we have way more insight about what is going on the monitoring side, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And that raises kind of an interesting point. And I think you and I have talked about this before, maybe not in this podcast, though. And that is that monitoring is an iterative process.
It
So
is.
monitoring should not be set it and forget it and then just watch the screen. And, if it's red, it's
Or
bad. If it's
don't
green,
even
it's
watch
good.
a screen, because a lot of
Yeah,
times we spend a lot of these conversations to try to understand how is the application working, right, what is the metrics that we need to go for it, and then we set up these marvelous dashboards with all of that, and then after that they say, oh, the monitoring is not working. Say, but you look at the alerts. No. So what's the point?
exactly. Yeah, everything goes to an error state and nobody fixes it, so you stop getting alerts, right? Yeah, so it is an iterative process, though, right? We have to revisit that, and I just want to talk about that just for a moment
Yeah.
because um, I think it's important that administrators, but also organizations, realize that, like inside your application, the environment changes, the way that the users want to consume the application or popular sections within the application. Those things all change. They evolve. They get better. They move,
Absolutely.
right? So monitoring has to adapt with that, and just don't forget about it, I guess, is really what I want to say.
Yeah.
Because if we include that, then we're going to have good metrics from our monitoring, which means that we can be more adaptable and adapt faster within those applications. Hopefully, we'll have an open feedback between all those people doing that work. But anyways, enough said about that. I just wanted to say don't set it and forget it because
Exactly. Because
yeah.
it's not good. And especially with the next one, general availability of the application inside work item integration in Azure Monitor. So I don't know about you, and this is something that we can have not a discussion but a conversation about. It is, I'm leveraging way more application inside that I ever thought about it.
Yeah,
I'm a very fan of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love, I've been exploring things like using as you know, I'm a PowerShell nerd, but I really like Bicep for kind of a query, right? So one of the shortcomings I've long felt with ARM templates is that it's not dynamic, right? It's very much a static thing.
Yes.
And I've been starting to explore Bicep and building ARM templates and things based, like, if you answer yes to this question, then change the next question based on that response, kind of a thing. And we can't do that in a static ARM template.
Yes.
But we can deploy app insights as part of ARM templates. So I think it's really cool, because if we start to combine these technologies, it really comes together to make just an amazing product within Azure overall, right? So the other thing that I really like about App Insights is how you can use Kusto query language, which, as of course I work a lot in Azure Sentinel as well. So as I'm getting a little better, and I mean a very small bit with Kusto, now you can also use that with App Insights data as well, right?
Yes. So what I like about this update is you basically build this work item integration that is a combination of different things. So workbooks that you can have it, like you mentioned, pre-built or even custom custom queries that you want for your application, and multiple, in this case, configuration on the work items that you have. Even they can differentiate a lot of those times that you want to do it. And what I like about this is you are building like a kind of a package for application insight. But what I like about this is the integration with GitHub and Azure DevOps. So now you can have the CI/CD even on this. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of going on the portal or through PowerShell to try to configure and adjust all of this, you can pre-test this, and now you have your. This is the part that I do love about this update is now you have the possibility of your Azure Monitor, right? And in this case, your application insights follow the agile methodology and the Scrum methodology or development methodology as any other application, because
Absolutely.
as and this should be correctly integrated, because if you are involving your application that you are deploying, you should involve as well your monitoring, because they should be end to end. They should be
Mm-hmm.
ending together and working together. So now be able to do this and be able to inject, in this case, the monitoring into the process of develop the application by building those ARM templates and deploying those ARM templates. It's a very easy step for integration these into the pipeline. When I'm uploading a new version of my application, I might deploy exactly the same, for example, ARM template. Or if I'm deploying a new feature, I might add that to the ARM template, and now I'm covering with the monitoring, right? This is where I see the very good usage of this particular update that is now in GA.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is important to note it is GA, so we can use
Yes.
this on our actual workloads for integrating our monitoring.
Absolutely, and that's really important, I think, regarding that, because otherwise we will be in trouble for that. Now, moving on to one of the fastest um, one of the fastest updates, Azure Ultra Disks is now in GA in North Central US. Okay, so Azure Ultra Disk is our slowest one, right?
Yeah, well, to be, I guess, fair disclosure, I did look at this one before our recording, because I was like, Ultra Disk. Well, what's so great about Ultra Disk? This sounds like another upcharge. Like, do you want a large size that SSD, sir? Why, yes, I do.
Yes. Charge me
So,
as much as you want. So
oh,
let's
you have one of those budgets. Okay, I got it.
let me just do one thing is, if you are new at this show, right? we have different types of disks in Azure, right?
Hmm.
We have what's called the standard HDD disk, that is our spindle disks. They are the
Spinning
cheapest.
rust, they say. Yeah.
Yes. Spinning what?
Spinning rust.
Okay. Exactly. Spinning crest. Um, so they are the cheapest one, but of course you don't have exactly the same performance. But then we enter into the SSD world, right? SSD slash NVMe world.
Hmm.
That is called the SSDs. So on SSDs in Azure, we have basically three tiers. We have the standard, we have the premium, and now we have the ultra. As you can
Mm.
imagine, the ultra is the top of the notch. So it's yes, please charge me. Here's my credit card, or my black credit card. Please
I
charge me.
will provide Marcos's credit card number in the comments
Yes.
later on this week for everybody.
Or
So
if
yeah.
you want to help us testing this, please. We don't have any type of this, but yeah, forget it. Let's move on.
We're off the rails again,
Yeah,
folks.
completely.
It's okay. Yeah. So within the scope of the Ultra Disk, what as I look at their kind of their IOPS and the throughput chart that they have published, and if you follow the link in the article, it takes you right to the Microsoft Docs article on this, which is really awesome, by the way. So if you have a 1 terabyte, right? So you can go up to, and hold on to your shorts, my friend, 65 terabyte.
64.
Well, 64. You're right. My division is pretty bad, but one off. Come on, that's not bad.
Yeah.
So let's say you have a 1 terabyte, but anything in that range up to 64 is 160,000 IOPS. What? Like that's really good. That's
So
like
by
SSD
IOPS,
ass good, right?
by IOPS we mean in and out per second. So
That's
we
great.
have
So IOPS is the standard measurement, right?
160,000 entries or out or in and outs per second on that disk that you can handle. It's massive.
It's huge.
It's
It's
huge.
massive, massive, massive.
Because usually,
So this is all fiber channel stuff, right?
yes.
Because you have to have fiber channel to be able to achieve those kinds of input and output write and read operations.
Yes.
And most of us, I say most of us, don't have fiber channel in our home data centers, or even in our let's say local data center. That's definitely top tier stuff.
Yes.
So the throughput in terms of megabytes is 2,000 megabytes per second.
Per second.
Per second.
So almost 2 terabytes in this case.
Yeah.
Almost 2 terabytes per second of throughput.
Read write. That's right. I mean, it's mind-boggling how fast this is. So there's some really good kind of trickle-down implications from this. So we talk a lot about like Azure Healthcare.
Yeah.
So if we just focus on that, like imaging technology, MRIs, ultrasounds, X-rays, that's a lot of data, particularly MRIs. I did a little bit of consulting work years ago. You actually might not have heard this story before. And I did work supporting some GE technology in a hospital, and they were having trouble with just this problem, which was being able to write the MRIs fast enough. And they couldn't get an actual real person from GE healthcare support to come to site to help diagnose it for something like 3 days. But as you know, MRIs run on 3 sets of staff, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's a critical service for every hospital that has an MRI. So, I mean, especially if it's the patient needing to be scanned. I mean, it's a big deal, right? So,
it is.
This kind of thing for throughput and IOPS is huge for healthcare verticals using Azure services. And of course, there's many other things like financial services, science, whatever. But when I think about healthcare and I think about like MRI data, I think about how this kind of thing is really kind of bringing those things together, right? And I think it's really cool how Microsoft is able to continuously, as you said at the start, be able to upgrade their hardware, even through all the adversity that we have with hardware supply chain right now,
Yes,
um,
absolutely.
to keep powering all of these industries to continuously make improvements. I don't want to get too far off the rails with it, but I just think that it's so cool.
Yeah, no, it is. And just to give an idea to you that you are seeing the podcast and seeing the show, usually a standard, just to have a comparison, we're talking about 160,000 IOPS. That is
Hmm.
a measure that we're doing when we're doing in this case performance on disks. Normal disk, in this case the standard SSD disk that we have, and this SSD that we have is 500 IOPS.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a world of difference.
and that's a standard SSD. And even if you're going to the HDD, like the spindle to rest, like Andrew said, is even lower than that. Our disks, if you're seeing,
It's bad.
so I bought the disc. I bought the NV disc that have like 500 mags read and write, like through output, or no 500 IOPS, and I say, wow, this is fast. Now I'm going to have like very cool, very cool. These have 160,000 IOPS. Just just
Yep.
just just to see the difference. So that's why we were playing. Please provide us your credit card, because this is something that you will need it absolutely
It's
without.
probably going to be quite expensive. Yeah, to be fair, we didn't look
Yeah,
into the pricing on
no,
it, and I also don't want to because I'm not going to be using that anytime soon. But
yeah,
I think there is a lot of industries that can use it,
they can use it. Yes,
and even if it's a temporary measure, right? So when we think of Azure, remember this is virtual infrastructure from the person consuming it, the organization consuming it,
absolutely,
right? And
absolutely.
we can spin up, say, a server cluster to process an MRI image, Azure Ultra Disks attached to those VMs, and we can do some processing of medical images. And then when we're done, we shut all that infrastructure down and move the data back to wherever we need it. So, like, this doesn't mean that you spin it up and keep it forever. Although I'm sure nobody would complain at Microsoft if you did.
Abs- Absolutely.
Somebody just got a great commission.
Yes, and have some good vacations. Oh wait, they cannot have vacations right now. But yeah, some delayed
Oh, don't
vacations.
start on that. Don't start on
Not
that. Let's roll the next clip.
exactly. Public preview on Azure Log Analytics in South India. So
Mm.
our good friends that now they are in, not in trouble, but they are suffering a little bit more with this.
They're
Uh,
having a big medical struggle there right now.
yes, with this COVID, um, they have some good news, at least for them, at least for their technical. That is, the Azure Arc Analytics is now in preview, public preview in South India. So um, our good friends and our follower of this podcast is being Azure Log Analytics, and Azure Automation is running the world. So now it's
Yeah.
extending to South India. This South India, if I'm not mistaken, is the new data center that they announced this year.
Yeah, I think it was earlier this year. They said they were going to launch it kind of in a rapid launch methodology.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, I have a couple of teams I actively work with in India for my clients. And, uh, I just want to say that it's pretty scary, right? Like this whole COVID thing and the way it's exploding there.
Yeah.
But with this rapid data center launch, one of the things they were targeting was healthcare and science
Yeah.
workloads for India, very specifically. And I remember reading that, so it's not insider knowledge by any stretch, but uh, I think this is a big step, right?
It
So
is.
not just log analytics, but the infrastructure to support the log analytics
Exactly.
being available. So there's a lot of things behind the scenes we don't see like the different service meshes and like the integrations of kind of bringing all these things to
together. Yeah,
together to the launch. But I think it's really cool
it is
because
cool.
we've seen South India go from announcement to what are we in here? May. So 5 months, let's say, from announcement to getting new services
Yeah.
announced already.
And it's
So
not
that's
the
pretty
only one,
cool.
because look at
No,
this public
ah,
preview of Application Insight in South India
and
as
that's a
well
big,
as West Central US.
wow,
So
excellent.
now our good friends, they will have Application Insight as well on West Central US and in South India for Application Insight. So besides the log analytics that they have in South India, they will have all the things that we are talking about, right? With Application Insights, they will have as well on South India. In this case, at this West Central one is the new is the Arizona one, right?
It is, yeah. West Central US
Is
is.
the new data center as well?
It's not West US. It's not Central US. It's West Central US. So,
Yes,
and
it's
I
not.
find it interesting, right?
I
Because
realized that it's not West US, it's not Central US, it's West Central US.
well, I think let's be honest, they probably sat in a virtual meeting room going, "Well, what the heck are we going to call this one, folks?"
Exactly.
But in Arizona, and I think you're right because it kind of rings a bell. But I think that that also speaks volumes about the different kind of like different lanes that Microsoft is really working very rapidly and aggressively in. Not the least of which is sustainability from a physical standpoint, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a data center, and let's say an Azure data center, you need at least what, 2 buildings, right? So you have 2 very large data center physical buildings in Arizona running servers, networking, all these magical things that we love to consume as we just like click the button and it works. But the cooling, the electricity, so they must be using a lot of solar and wind generation for West Central US to try and ensure that it is not just what did they say? Not just carbon neutral, but net, right? So
Yes.
they want to be negative. They want to produce more to the grid than what they're consuming.
Yes.
So that's a pretty big thing to
It
do.
is. And it's a statement that they say by I think it's 2025 or 2020
Yeah, which is going to
something.
creep up on us awfully quick
Oh
because
yeah.
it's 2021 already.
Yeah.
And if I think in terms of getting my Christmas shopping done, that's only 4 more times. So
Never thought about that. Yeah. It reminds me that the Cranks, right? The film, the Cranks movie, that they counting the days or they counting the days to Christmas, something like that. Is that movie that we always watch on Christmas? But let's not wait for that because Christmas means that it's snow and everything else, and I
we're
need a
just
little
going
bit
to
of
get
sun
there.
and a little bit of warm, especially in Alberta. So let's move on to the next one. We're
Absolutely.
now entering into the theme of Azure Site Recovery. I have to say it, but let's start with the first one. General availability. Set up Azure Site Recovery with proximity placement groups across hybrid and cloud disaster recovery scenarios. What a
Mhm.
big title, but what an amazing update. And now this is GA, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does this
So,
means?
well, it's really cool, right? So it means that on triggering the failover, Site Recovery will land the failed over VM inside the target PPG provided by you, right? So really, it just means when a site recovery is triggered, when a failure happens and you have to fail over, that VM will now try to stay as close to all of the other VMs in your proximity group that's defined. The reason you would define a proximity group, for example, would be database applications. So if you have an application that needs a database that also needs a web server that also needs a middle tier, So you have like these four systems kind of working in conjunction. You want to keep those physically close together. You want to avoid data egress from regions and things like that, right? So you want to keep them all together. And that wasn't necessarily 100% before. I don't want to say the phrase hit and miss, but it was. So
Yes.
now we can
It,
actually define it, right?
I think it goes a little bit, if I'm allowed to go a little deeper on this. What I like to explore is the part of when we're doing this site, when you're doing disaster recovery, right? You're doing disaster recovery to from one region to another or inside of the same zone, right?
Yes.
That is possible. But usually you have disperse those applications. For example, if you have dispersed in by availability zones, I see a lot of those happening. Like you are dispersing like the web servers, right, into three different zones, which is normal because if a zone becomes unavailable, you still have the other two zones inside of the same region. But when you're going right to disaster recovery, and we're going to uh, uh, you're going to on a disaster recovery scenario, and you are doing to another region, right? The DR using ASR in this case, you cannot say where is that machine is going to be placed. If it's on the zone one, zone two, or in this case, availability zone one, availability zone two, availability zone three. What it does is it will respect your proximity placement groups, and it will, when you're doing all of this, it will trigger the failover, and it will do it on the same way. Because a lot of things, what can happen is, and I see a lot of organizations that they don't understand correctly the concept of availability zones or the concept of high availability inside of Azure, and they put, like, for example, the web servers on the availability zone 1 and the application servers on the availability zone 2, and then
Hmm.
the database servers on the availability zone 3. Yes, they will have high availability, but what's going to happen is if the availability zone 1 becomes unavailable, they lose the application because it's not organized on that way. You should spread
It
horizontal, not vertical, those workloads
exactly. It
across
has
the
to be distributed across zones.
horizontally, not vertically, right? And that's the part that is really key to this. So now you can have those when you're doing those proximity placement groups across the habit, like you mentioned, you are building everything, for example, in within one zone, because it doesn't make any sense to segregate between zones when you have a web server, for example, using that example, on one zone, database on the other zone, because yes, you will have performance, but not the same performance as we have on the same zone, right? Because we have to remember zones are data center, physical data centers, that they are within 2 milliseconds.
Yes, within one region. Yeah.
One region. So you still have 2 milliseconds of latency. And if you are on the same data center, you should have a sub millisecond latency. So you are increasing that on your application, right? And that's the part that I just want to go a little bit deeper on this because it's an awesome update. It will facilitate our lives way better when those times that the Murphy arrives, and we we need to
It happens. It happens.
oh my, faster than you think.
Yeah, well, all it takes, let's say it's spring and summer here in Canada, right? So, all it takes is one road construction project and
Yes,
a hi-ho digging, and all of a sudden they've done a fiber cut, and one data center goes down.
absolutely.
It usually takes a little more than that. I freely admit, but really, we're a little bit fragile sometimes when it comes to physical infrastructure, and that's what availability zones are for, is to distribute that workload. And I think what you said was very critical. that a lot of companies see the zones and they think, okay, I have the, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 for my apps, but they kind of stack them up
Yeah,
and down. And it, like, when you look at it on a chart or on a PowerPoint slide, it makes perfect sense. However, when zone 1 goes down and you just kind of cover that off, all of a sudden you're missing the whole web tier for your
yeah,
application, right? So you have to distribute, like you say, horizontally across those zones, and that's really, really critical. So yeah, good takeaway on today. Really good deep dive on that one, by the way.
yeah, absolutely. Moving to the next Azure Site Recovery is the GA of Azure Site Recovery now supports, this is massive, cross-continental disaster recovery for 3 region pairs. So this means that now, if you are, for example, on West US, okay, not West Central, West US, okay, you
Uh-oh.
are West
Yep.
US, you can have disaster recovery to, in this case, for example, East US, and then the other one, for example, to Europe. So if all the North America becomes unavailable, or the super volcano of Yellowstone erupts, right? At least you
Uh-oh.
have the Europe that can support your business.
Exactly, right. And this is a big one because this is not going to be for kind of your average small medium business. This is going to be more for enterprise clients that have cross-continental or worldwide business operations, right? Because there's going to be some data charges as part of this, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so we have to think about that. I know I've already mentioned egress once, I think, this podcast, but that is something to think about as part of your overall design. Now, last, I wanted to call it slide. It's not a slide at all, is it? Last update that you showed us, you talked really well about horizontal planning when it comes to zones. This is kind of next level, right? So this is geographical redundancy.
Of your
Uh,
disaster recovery scenario, yes.
exactly. So this means if North America goes down, then you have Europe. And you can do it for 3 region pairs. This is amazing, right? And this one is general availability.
Yes, it is. So it's
I
it's
don't
available.
remember seeing a preview for this one come through.
I have to see the my
I feel
notes,
like I would
but
have been more excited about it and remembered it. I'm gonna check when this one hit preview, but
no, it's
it is
already
GA.
it's GA. So yeah. So a lot of those things is what it is possible. It's something that, especially for organizations that they are global dispersed, right? They are using multi regions. It's really important for them because now they can use those regions to just restore those workloads without any problem because they already have all the network and all of that, and
Exactly.
makes them way more uh, not secure but
Resilient.
resilient. Exactly. I was looking for that word, resilient, regarding because it's not they are truly leverage Azure
Yeah.
as a global cloud, right? Because now they can be to 3 different regions. So I can be North America, I can be in Europe, I can be Asia Pacific, I can be whatever I want across the globe. It really needs like a big kind of uh, asteroid to kill us all. But then what's the point? We all
We won't be
killed.
worried so much about our
Exactly about
websites at
that.
that
It's
stage, I think.
just the next
Exactly.
generation that comes and recovers the data of that company, right? But still, yeah, those kind of things. But it makes like close to 100% of resilience, right? That's the interesting part
Yeah,
of it.
exactly, right? Because now you can fail kind of worldwide,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It's
Worldwide.
yeah, it's kind of cool.
Eh,
I think we're going to start to see some companies kind of using test scenarios.
announcing that, say, yeah, we are covering, we will have 100% of this or whatever that. Absolutely. So moving to the last but not the least,
Oh
and
no.
it's really important, is the Azure Site Recovery that now supports Azure Policy in public preview. And oh my God, if we don't need this right away.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is in
This is
preview.
preview, yes, not
Yeah,
GA.
but now you can enable ASR for your VMs at scale to ensure organizational standards, right? So now we can use policy
Yeah.
for ASR. Ah, this one's
So
so great because now we just design this once, we build the policy, and then we can apply, for example, a whole resource group
yeah.
into ASR using the policy.
And the good thing about this is what we are doing with this is we make standards, we make the governance easier, and because of this we can see it. For example, we can attach to this to management groups. Now we can say that, for example, because it's production environment, we all the VMs in production environment will have disaster recovery because they will be inside of the progression of all the production subscriptions. So we can leverage all the policies. We can even leverage, in this case, when we apply this to tags. So the all of the good thing about Azure policies they can give us regarding that. And it's not only that, is the one that it's not the part of the configure, it's the part of the policy that if you see the screen, and I apologize if you are listen to this, just go there in this case to the YouTube channel, the Azure Centric YouTube channel, to just to see this, because on the screen they on the blog post they highlighted the configure disaster recovery on virtual machines by enable replication policy.
Mhm.
But on top of that, for me, is one of the key, in this case, policies, that is the audit of virtual machines without disaster recovery configured. So this will
Exactly.
give us the report of what is not being protected regarding disaster recovery in our environment. So and that's really key about it. And you can put different policy definitions. Again, this needs to be tied with tags, with all of those things, but it's a really good way to make sure that we are protecting, we are making sure that our production environment is going to be resilient, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think I have two favorite things about Azure Policy. And the first one is it allows us to apply things evenly
Yes.
across whatever groups we define. And the second one, like you say, is about compliance, right? So we can see those reports and say, hey, we have these VMs that are out of compliance. Why? Is the tagging wrong? Like, what is it we need to correct? Or you can also add exemptions, right?
Yes.
And then, for example, you don't want like your DevOps stuff, probably like your testing DevOps and things like that in ASR. Certainly, you don't want your DevOps machines.
Or
So,
even your, for example, your firewalls, because you have
yeah,
a different ones, so you can, and because it will be on your production environment, for example, you do, and those are appliances, and you have other mechanisms depending on the firewall you're talking about, that you have to recover those, or you have like active passive kind of configuration that they
exactly.
already are on the disaster recovery region, for example, or location, that you don't
Or
want
you're
to do it.
using Azure Firewall, and that's built in.
Yeah, or something like that, right? On the other one. So a lot of that you can create those exceptions, like you mentioned. I'm a huge fan on Azure Policy. It's one of my big topics when I talk about Azure governance, is Azure Policies. It's basically doing that, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I think you and I are very closely aligned on Azure Policy for sure.
Ah,
It's a very important tool
it is
that is underutilized sometimes.
completely. With that, we come to the end of our show this week. I hope that you like it. So, if you like it, please don't forget to subscribe. If you don't like it, just subscribe as well, just to hear us and giving the thumbs down if you want. We love all the type of support, bad or good in this case.
Absolutely. Yeah, we accept all feedback.
All
No
feedbacks.
additional upcharges apply. Just leave your credit card number and we'll test out Ultra Disk.
Especially, we will test the ultra discs. Absolutely, we'll let you know if they are really ultra or not. Okay.
I think we might get in trouble now.
Yeah, I think it is. So, Andrew, one more time, thank you for being here, for making this a show that it is already awesome. At least for me, I'm looking forward to this every single week. I think it's repetitive. I think I'm doing this for 28 weeks, and we are saying the same thing 28 times. That's okay.
But
Whatever.
you know what? I appreciate first you, and I also appreciate all of our viewers and listeners. Again, leave some feedback. Hit the subscribe button, and let's hear what you've got to say out there. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. So I hope I can see you next week. And thank you and bye.